Mohammed, please tell us a little bit about your journey in your professional development and how you came across HeartMath.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, really in 30 seconds, my entire life for the last almost 15 years has been around understanding and how to leverage the unconscious mind. So that led me on a journey of learning and getting trained in neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and I've had a lot of success helping my clients get through, their own challenges, their own burnouts using that model. But I had my own little interesting experience with burnout back in 2015. And
Hmm.
that led me searching for answers. And that's how I found HeartMath Institute. And in my initial research and going on their website and getting, I guess, familiar with their programs and their techniques, I realized that I effectively had to get into this. And when I became a certified trainer with them, I realized that out of everything that I've learned so far, when we're talking about resiliency, when we're talking about understanding the effects of stress on our physiology, really HeartMath has a lot of answers, and it's making a lot of difference. Actually, made a lot of difference in my own life, and also in the lives of the clients that I've been able to work with in the last few years.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of your clients that you have worked with, especially if you could speak to the topic of how women and men have some similarities and may have some differences as well as they work through burnout, which could be considered to be a critical illness. It's definitely chronic and very, prominent in our work lives now. Tell us a little bit about what you have found.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely it is a critical illness. I mean, the statistics around disability and stress leave and burnout from a corporate engagement and a workplace engagement is quite staggering. I would say I work with about, I think the split honestly is 60-40, 60% women as far as my clientele go and 40% men. And I have found more similarities. I mean, ultimately, I think we all have our own beliefs on what it means to be a working man or what it means to be a working woman. And I also believe that another unique variable that comes to play is, well, the role they have in their respective family. So if one person, if a man is the primary breadwinner in the family, well, of course, that's going to have much more added stress and overwhelm in having to work and having to, effectively provide that income for the family. Yet, if that same role and beliefs are for a woman, and I work with clients who the women is the primary breadwinner, then it's almost the same. So, in my experience, while I'm sure, of course, there are going to be subtle differences in gender roles, but when it comes down to the actual roots of the problems, it very much is the same, at least with the sort of clients that I get.
Hmm. Hmm. So if there are more similarities than differences, tell me a little bit about HeartMath and how you use HeartMath to address those issues that people may have, especially if they are the prime breadwinner and also they may have double duty at home as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the research that HeartMath has been doing for the last 30 years, and that's how long they've been around, it really shows that the emotions that we have effectively have a direct impact on our physiology from a hormonal level.
Mm.
So when an individual feels emotions such as fear or worry or tension or hate or anger or nervousness, any of these emotions, we categorize them as a depleting emotion because we all have this metaphorical inner battery. And that's what that emotion actually does to that battery, is that it depletes us. And from a hormonal level, when someone feels even anger or frustration for just 5 minutes, or a sense of overwhelm, like, oh my God, how am I going to get this done? And I have to do this and I have to do this and pay the bills, and, all of that, our body actually produces cortisol.
Hmm.
And cortisol has a half-life of 12 hours. And, in my workshops and in my work one-on-one, I show people, some of the studies that HeartMath Institute has done where, there's one example of an argument that takes place at work. But because of that argument, which lasts about 20 minutes, And after the 20 minutes, the two individuals have fully made up, have completely made up. So it's, water under the bridge. But what ends up happening is because one individual was actually hooked up to a Holter monitor, a device that measures the individual's heart rate over a period of 24 hours, and was asked to keep a log. That 20-minute argument took his baseline of his heart rate, which was around 80 beats per minute. During the argument, it went up to 150 beats per minute. And again, they weren't physically moving. They weren't physically active. It was just because of the cortisol and the emotion that gets spiked. So talk about burning gas, right?
Wow.
But after they had completely made up and everything was good, water under the bridge, the individual's heart rate remained elevated for the next 8 hours at 120 beats per minute. So that's literally like being in a parked car with your foot just on the gas. You're just burning gas for no reason. And because of the heart-brain communication, where the brain sends information and communication down to the heart, but normally that has to do more with just increasing and lowering blood pressure. The heart actually sends much more information up to the brain. Now, they haven't exactly figured an exact ratio, but they're saying it's either 80-20 or 90-10. So the emotions which we feel have a direct impact on our heart, which changes that synchronization between our sympathetic and our parasympathetic branch. All that to say is when we feel these depleting emotions, what ends up happening is it sends what I like to call a very technical term, a glitchy signal up to the brain. Right? That glitchy signal effectively shrinks all of the wonderful options. It's called cortical inhibition, right? But all of the wonderful abilities that we have to make good decisions, to think clearly, to have foresight, right? To be creative, all of that effectively goes away, which usually brings upon, more emotions of frustration and nervousness and anger and fear. So it's like this downward spiral individuals find themselves at, right? And eventually that does lead to overwhelm. Now, the good news is when we consciously, and this is what I teach my clients in my workshops and my one-on-one work, but when we take even 5 minutes, just, litter throughout the day, to consciously and genuinely access an emotion such as appreciation or love or gratitude. I remember several years ago when I first got introduced to the idea of having, a gratitude journal. I was like, that's nice, right? I don't really see myself doing it. I'm like, that's nice, right? But I was honestly, again, from my background of the unconscious mind, I was really understanding it here, as opposed to understanding it here.
Yeah.
But when you actually consciously and genuinely activate one of these emotions, what ends up happening is we get another 1,400 biochemical reactions. But in this case, the primary hormone that our physiology naturally produces is DHEA, which is a vitality hormone, which is around health and recovery and healing. And it actually synchronizes the activity of our parasympathetic and our sympathetic branches. And what we get is cortical facilitation, meaning our brain now effectively is working at a more optimal level, right? So that's sort of, in terms of, in a nutshell, from a physiology and from an emotional resilience conversation that I'm having with my clients, that's what HeartMath brings to the table, is, practical exercises that take really just minutes to do. But when we do it, we can naturally fill ourselves up with DHEA, make better decisions, synchronize our nervous system, and effectively get ourselves an actual way to get ourselves from either if you were in burnout, get ourselves out of that, or if we're heading towards that, to catch it before it actually happens with a lot of self-awareness.
Yeah.
That comes with it.
I would imagine like the daily grind when you have these hits of cortisol that last for so long, that's actually what eventually does cause either a breakdown, or it does give you you lose your vitality, or that's when you do get a critical illness. Would you see the same pattern with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you say the daily grind, because I think one of the major shifts that we work through with, again, with my clients is that the attitude and the mentality, the mindset that we have when it comes to the daily grind. Because again, going back to the research, you might be familiar with the concept. It was very popular maybe a decade ago. Stress is good. Stress actually increases performance.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's true and it's not true. The real definition is we've kind of reframed that. We've said that rather than calling it stress, there is no such thing as good stress.
Right. Okay.
According to the model of HeartMath. Rather, if you choose to see it as a challenge and you embrace it as a challenge, right? That shift in attitude, that shift in mindset actually allows our performance to go up. And it allows us to have that, to sustain our performance over a longer period of time, as opposed to kind of going up and then down. Because, if someone comes up to me and says, hey, Mohammed, we just got landed a big client, right off your weekend plans, we're going to be working through this over weekend, right?
Yeah.
I look at that and be like, oh my God, like what a pain. If that's the attitude and that's the, the mindset that I approach it at, that is never going to increase my performance. And that's going to bring about emotions that are depleting, right? Which again goes into the cortisol and all of the impacts that it has on our physiology, right? But instead, if that comes and I choose to approach it with, okay, yeah, we got to get this done. Bring it, right? Let's see if you can knock it out in just one day, right? That change, because now I'm accessing a very different part of my emotion set. Right now, it's a thing of maybe bravery or courage or just a sense of duty, right? Like, let's get this done. So now I'm getting DHEA, and my performance will actually get better. So, that's sometimes it. When individuals come to me and they refer to what they're doing as a daily grind, already a lot of communication and information from me on how they perceive what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's an opportunity to have obviously outside of the scope of this conversation, but it's an opportunity to actually have a deeper conversation on, well, what are we doing? Because often what ends up happening is they actually enjoy their careers very, very much. But there's a couple things that they've been ignoring, which has had a carryover and has turned the work that they enjoy very much and the contributions they're making into a sense of a grind. And we can change that.
That is such a lovely way expressing the difference, or even how we do use certain words or certain phrases. And we can attribute that to just everyone around us, us talking about the daily grind. Like once that's set into our mindsets, as a daily grind, like everything then becomes a grind. Whereas if I had to chuckle when you said like, bring it on, because it's snowing outside and we had a nice storm last week. And I know for many people, especially parents who are working, that does add to that mentality of daily grind. It can't help but do that, right? And I was thinking, bring it on. Let's have another snowstorm so we can have another snow day, right? So a different way of thinking about it. We talk about this all the time in our lives about, let's reframe this. But I would imagine once those hormones kick in, it can be like that rabbit hole where we start to think, well, this is a grind and now I got to do this. And, it can become very much self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, absolutely. The language that we use, I like to teach people that the language that we use is very much hypnosis.
Yeah.
Right? It's self-hypnosis. Individuals who have a habit, and it's just really just a thing they learn, and they're not even really conscious about it, but they have a habit of saying, oh, no, not that. That's such a pain in the neck. There's such a pain in the neck. They continue saying that's such a pain in the neck don't be surprised if in a few years they actually have neck pains.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? It's
Wow.
happened. It's a
Yeah.
real thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my big insights in being coached by a master coach was going through a period where my words were all about it is so hard. And she said to me, if you don't get past that language of it's so hard, it's not going to get any better. It was just, you know, it's that low rumble of discontent and everything is so hard. And you start to live into it. It's,
Mhm.
yeah. Women are very familiar with hormones, right? We're always talking about hormones, or people are always talking to us about our hormones. Can you share how these particular hormones that you were talking about, how they affect men?
Well, I would say they definitely do have an impact on effect on men. But when we're talking about culture, and there definitely is a set of permissions and restrictions. I think that does exist, right? Where you know, I honestly have worked with a lot of men who are like, well, as a man, I'm not supposed to let these things bother me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that is a very critical conversation where we almost have become, and of course I'm generalizing here, but we almost have become, no matter what happens, we have to kind of get through it because it's our duty and it's who we're supposed to be, and not necessarily recognizing the times that no, we actually need to take a break and need to actually perhaps talk to someone, get some help, that perhaps we are lacking the skill set, because there are definitely individuals and more men, I guess, if we're talking about differences, definitely more men that almost have done such a great job in practicing how to be disassociated with their emotions
Mm-hmm.
that they now have an inability to get in touch with their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're all about being here as opposed to processing what's happening over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is a challenge, right? But they're getting affected. That's the thing. They're getting affected by the hormones just the same way, to answer your question. So cortisol is happening and it's got nowhere to go, right?
Oh.
And eventually it shows up as a panic attack
Mm-hmm.
or fainting, right? Uh, Not to disclose anything, but a pretty well-known Canadian brand company, I got a gig to do resilience training with them because one of their C-suite employees had a burnout, collapsed in the middle of the airport,
Mm.
right? And so it's like, okay, we need to do something here. So that's eventually it finds a way to surface.
Mm-hmm.
And when it finds a way to surface, and someone gets to at that extreme end, they're usually out for a while,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? To answer your question, the hormones definitely have the same impact, same effect. But I think it takes sometimes a little bit longer for the man to wake up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
That there has been that, like you were saying, rules in our society and expectations for both men and women, and we need to recognize our other genders and our other sexes, that we all have similarities. Sometimes, as an individual, we experience them differently. So I appreciate that you've brought the man's point of view to our call today, to our interview today. You talk about there's some things that are simple but are difficult to implement. I think we hear this, but I'd like to hear it from you as well. How do you talk to people about the simple things that they can do to keep themselves healthy in mind, spirit, and in the heart?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So very simple exercise that we can all do, but definitely actually making it habit is the hard part, right? But when we do it, I can promise you, and I don't make a lot of promises in life, but I can promise you that it's going to really change things around, to almost offset and combat the general vibe that there exists about, you got to keep doing it, you got to work,
Yeah.
oh, it's another Monday, back to the grind of work, all of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
when we genuinely wake up in the morning and the first thing we do before we actually take a look at our to-do list, we perhaps visit our to-be list, where we ask ourselves, who do we wish to be for that day? And just that day, and we take 10 minutes, and I can even run you through a quick HeartMath technique. It'll take about a minute and a half at most.
I'd love that.
Okay.
The exercise that you took me through, I actually did choose compassion and compassion for a family member. And I think even during my 1-minute breaks that I have throughout the day, I think I will focus on compassion. I think that will really help me personally. It's important for both men and women in successful return to work during and after critical illness, and also for those women who appreciate their work. And sometimes we do feel like it's a daily grind even after 60, but we do still have joy in the work that we do. And just that little fine tuning, I really appreciate you for that exercise.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, right? Ultimately, we always get back to, we are all humans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I would ask my audience, if you enjoyed this, including the exercise that I went through, please give our channel a like and subscribe if you have not already subscribed. I will put information regarding Mohammed's website and the work that he does. There's a great video on his website where he's talking to his clients. Actually, I think it was a talk that you did, right, Mohammed?
I believe
one of them is a talk to a group of your clients.
So that's the one I have on the website. There's a lot more on my YouTube, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.